All right. So on today's Friday FARcast, it literally is a FARcast because I'm recording this segment with my good buddy Robert Bonomo halfway around the world. So it's not quite as far as we can get, but it's pretty damn far. What's going on, Robert?
How you doing, man? I'm doing really well.
Doing fantastic here. So it's been a few years since I had you on the show.
Yeah.
I think the last time I had you on with Patrick, the money guy. And
Right. I was in Vietnam, I remember.
so the three of us, we were talking, I don't know what we were talking about, but it was a pretty good conversation. And it was like, the only thing that was missing was the three of us and like a bottle of scotch. I mean, that's what it felt like. So, but it's been too long, and wanted to get you back on here. But not that I've been waiting to have you back on the program, but we have something to talk about. That's your new excellent video over on YouTube called The 21 Faces of God, which is a really comprehensive and archetypal and mythopoetic look at the major arcana in tarot. So first of all, congratulations on that. You're getting a lot of accolades, and they're really well received. And I just wanted to jump in and see where you got the inspiration from, and maybe walk people through that process a little bit.
Yeah. So my last novel, Your Love Incomplete, this was about 10 years ago when I wrote it. I used the major arcana as the narrative arc. So I really got into my entry into the major arcana was the path. And I think a lot of people look at it as card by card, but they don't look too much at the path. And I wrote a whole novel on that narrative arc. And I started to look around, and there was really nothing that I could see. There are some works that go through the path, but in film, there was nothing. So no one had made a film. And remember, this film is not about divination. It's about the cards themselves. And I felt like the cards had given me so much. They really have. Getting into the cards got me into astrology. It was through the cards.
Sure.
Those later books of Jung on alchemy, Aeon, the Mysterium, through the cards, I finally understood those books. Those books are not easy books to read. But I remember it all just began to click. And thanks to the cards.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to create a film, and I love film, classic film. I love classic film. I like classical music a lot. So I wanted to there are a lot of cookbooks on the tarot, but there are not a lot of books that give you the feeling of a card. And Rob, that's I'm so happy we can have this conversation because you're a tarot reader. You know, I remember you've talked about, you spent years reading cards. No?
Absolutely.
You still do, but you've done for many years. And when you learn the cards, it's a little bit like playing music, hitting the notes. But when you feel the cards, that's when all the inspiration comes through. Mm-hmm. And as a tarot reader, sometimes I think I get more than the querent because I get that inspiration. I see it. Mm-hmm. I did 2 readings today. I was shocked. And, the querents were like, well, yeah, I mean, I could see they were getting it, but I saw it all. It was so clear.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing the cards gave. So I wanted to try and transmit to people that feeling you get, especially I only did the major arcana, but that you can get with the cards because these archetypes are very, very powerful. Mm-hmm. Very powerful.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you use the major arcana for the arc of a novel because I feel like when you really get into the heart and the meat and the sizzle of a tarot reading, you're telling a story, right?
Totally.
I mean, this is what it's about. It's not like, well, there's this card here and there's this card. I mean, you see the whole thing as a tapestry, and then you're able to relate a story to that person. And I mean, I think that's when it gets really, really good. That's when it gets sexy, and you know that you're in some kind of deeper, more meaningful flow. And that's great, man. So you've got a lot of really good feedback from a lot of the folks that have been watching. Yep. How long did it take you from start to finish to complete the whole thing?
I spent I would say I spent at least a year. So I set up files for each one of the parts of the film. There are 27 parts. So 5 introductory parts. And then I go through each of the 22 cards. About a year looking for images, films, clips, and then 2 years making it. So well north of 2 years.
Yeah.
And
Well,
about every day. It was about 2 or 3 hours every day with the occasional 10 hours just like go crazy.
right. So that was a real act of endurance. Which of the major arcana would you ascribe? Would you ascribe this journey to? Maybe it's a number of them, but that act of endurance, what would you ascribe that to?
That's a really good question. I would say the emperor.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to have stones to work on something for 3 years that you're not going to get a nickel from.
Yeah.
Because I understood this. I used copyrighted material, and I knew this was. I mean, I'm not arguing with it, but on YouTube gives you the opportunity to use copyright material. The copyright holders can monetize it. I accepted that, but it was just this was a labor of love, and in the end, it's that fight, no. Because more than once, I was completely knocked out. I remember on The Fool, I got so stuck on The Fool. And I'm like, if I'm stuck here, it took me a couple months to get through The Fool. But when The Fool came...
Did you do sequentially? Did you start with The Fool?
Interestingly, the first card I did... So the first 5 I did, the first card I did was the Tower.
Okay. I like that. I like that.
And it was interesting, too. And it came as an inspiration. I used the Tower. There's no voiceover in the Tower. It's those scenes from Fight Club. And then it goes through the war in Iraq scenes. And then you see Building 7 collapse. And then you see Liberty Tower rise at the end. It's the alchemy. Because for me, the one key, if you want to, if there's one way to describe the path of the major arcana, it's alchemy. It's alchemy. And in the film, I go back and try and show those initial alchemy images from like the 13th and 14th century, how similar they are to the Visconti Sforza deck. And I show a lot of comparisons, no? And that sense of alchemy is the key, I think. More than astrology, it's alchemy in the cards.
Interesting. So have you ever seen The Game with
yeah.
Michael Douglas?
Right.
To me, The Game is the ultimate sort of personification of the Tower. Right, as a film. I mean,
yeah. And the two of them, right?
Well,
the brother, right?
There's the brother, but I mean, if you follow the arc of the film, Michael Douglas is a real arrogant prick, and Sean Penn is his little brother, and he gives him this present for his birthday, and he basically signs him up with this group that will destroy him, and will destroy his life, right? Because this guy has everything. He's done everything. But what he hasn't experienced the utter and complete collapse of everything all at once. And this is what happens with people with money. They insulate themselves. And so there's this group that comes in, which is very interesting because this group can manipulate reality, right? They can go in and do anything they want, because he signed off on all these permissions. So at the end of the film, I'll do the spoiler here. At the end of the film, he winds up in Mexico with nothing.
Oh,
do you remember that scene?
Yes.
He loses
everything. That's not a long time ago.
He loses everything. It's a brilliant movie. He loses everything. So he has to come back, just like one of the immigrants, and cross the border, get back to the States. And when he does, he kind of goes wacko and decides he's going to take things into his own hands. And this is where the whole kind of experience goes sideways. And they have to do a lot of kind of course corrects in time, so that they have this outcome that they want, right? And the outcome is him falling off that tower, jumping off that tower. Do you remember that scene? And he falls through this pane of glass, and there's this massive cushion at the bottom where he pops up, and everybody's there, and they're blowing their, little party horns, and there's champagne, and he's like, "What the fuck?" Right? But in that moment, he finishes his path as the man who leaps off the tower, and he loses everything, which is the tower, right? Everything crumbles. And then he winds up becoming kind of reborn again and finds his power again in a different kind of way. It's one of the best movies that's really representative of one of the major arcana. And there are other movies out there, but I think that's probably the best in terms of personification.
All right. And I focused a lot from a few clips was Fight Club too, because I love that scene at the end of Fight Club, which I use, where the last scene you see the two towers collapse. Remember that film was made in 1997.
Right. That, and of course, it's in the book as well. Don't you think the Fight Club is like the Lovers and the Devil card? You know?
Oh, yeah.
In
a sense, and the two people falling out of the tower.
That's right. It is the Lovers and the Devil card because they have this weird attraction to each other. Nobody's seen Fight Club. I'm not going to spoil Fight Club. If you haven't seen it, go see it.
Yeah.
But
let's not spoil that one. Yeah.
No, but they go from being the lovers to this devilish kind of attraction, which is using these seething energies, right, to do something that's very, very destructive at the end of the film.
And remember, Ouspensky wrote a great little book on the tarot. You can find it on the internet. I can't remember the name of it. It's free. And what he does is he puts the cards against their opposites. Yeah. If you put the Lovers next to the Devil, it's the same card.
It's the same card.
But you're way along on the path.
Yeah,
so what was so beautiful in the Lovers, in the Devil,
right? You become chained. You become chained by ego, desire, jealousy. Not eroticism, but sex without heart. I mean, all those things, right?
I think one great example of the devil is the guru who can't stop screwing his followers. You know, because that last set of cards, that last line of cards, that's the spiritual level, and the devil guards that path. You've got to pass through him. And what's interesting is if you follow from death, you go to the night. Mm-hmm. All the cards after death are the night. Yeah. The devil, the tower, the star, the moon, and then you're born again in the sun. You are in the depths of hell when you are between the devil and the tower.
That's right. I mean, that channel in the major arcana it's a major channel. And a lot of people don't get past that channel, man.
And that's why, when you look at the hangman, the hangman's that moment when you begin to wake up. But then what happens? You die. Yeah. Then temperate. And what happens is when you die to your old self, that inflation comes. People become so inflated, so full of shit. These newly awakened gurus are incredibly dangerous. And that's where temperance comes in, no? Yeah, I use in temperance that scene where Buddha touches the ground when he's enlightened. Mm-hmm. When Mara tells him, by what authority, and he just touches the ground. That's temperance. You got to ground yourself again before you get to the devil. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, you're in serious trouble.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of the hangman, I mean, that's a really good interpretation of somebody who's like woken up. But and through that awakening process, indulges more in ego. When I think of the hangman, I also feel like the hangman invokes a lot of intense suffering. I mean, there is suffering with the hangman because you realize you can't do anything. Yeah. There's nothing you can do. You realize that there is a level of, impotence, spiritual and physical impotence, and all you have to do is surrender to whatever your conditions are. And the temperance in that moment plays another role and function of not being too hard on yourself or being gentle and kind with yourself after you've gone through this profound spiritual position in one's life. And I think the hangman is one of the most powerful cards in the major arcana.
And I open it up with that scene in Paris, Texas. I think it's the first scene where what's the actor's name? It's skipping me. Right, where he's walking through the desert and he has that milk carton and he takes the last gulp and he drops it. That's the initial scene I use with the music from Arvo Part, Tabula Rasa. I don't use voiceover, but I think I kind of capture that just sense of wonder, but also it's terrorizing and very lonely.
Yeah, no, it is. The hangman it's like the image. One of the images is Odin on the Yggdrasil tree.
Yeah,
hanging upside down and being suspended. It's a very, and the harder you try to get out of the hangman, your position just tightens and becomes even more difficult to.
And remember, the historical connection with the hangman were shame paintings. So in that late medieval, early Renaissance period, if somebody had been a traitor, like a politician or someone, they would make graffiti pictures of him hanging upside down. So it has also this sense of shame to it.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens when sometimes I remember what happened to me. There were things I was ashamed to believe and to write and to say. I said, I can't say this. And when I did, one side of me was euphoric, but the other side was, how could I have said that?
Right.
It takes a long time to become comfortable with those thoughts, with those feelings.
What do you think the astrological representation of the hangman is? Neptune, Pisces?
Well, in the traditional sense, it's water, actually. Mm-hmm. They usually associate it with water. But if I had to give it a sign, I think, it could be Piscean. There's also something very Aquarian about it, I think. That's what kind of jumps out at me. No, there's something strange about it. Mm-hmm. And it has an Aquarian kind of a flavor. But I really think with the hangman, some of the cards are like with Justice and Libra and Athena, it all kind of fits. Mm-hmm. Some of it really doesn't. You need to go somewhere else, But yeah, I would say I would probably go Aquarius, maybe.
Yeah, I would sort of check the box on Pisces because you have to surrender and let go. Right? There's nothing you can do, and then you get kind of resurrected from that position. So you started off with the tower, which I think is brilliant because you're invoking Mars, you're dealing with Mars energy,
right,
and you're breaking down sort of your barriers or your own blocks to be able to do this. I think that was brilliant. Which one did you end on?
Oh yeah, funny. I didn't end with the world. The world I finished a few weeks before because you know how sometimes when you write a novel, you got to have that end, you're pointing to the end. So I ended with Judgment. Mm. And I used it. Did you see that film Melancholia?
No.
Oh, it's a fabulous Lars von Trier. And the last scene is the apocalypse. So another planet crashes into Earth and you see the three of them waiting and the fire just explodes.
Yeah.
And that was the last one I did. I had it all. The rest of it was set up.
Interesting. I love Judgment. It's one of my favorite cards.
Oh, it's a fabulous card.
Love the Aeons. Great. Brilliant. So much in there. Well, this is really cool. And so people can find this film on YouTube. Is it your YouTube channel, Robert Bonomo? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's actually what is it? It's Robert Bonomo Cactus Land. Okay. But if you just go to YouTube, the 21 Faces of God, it'll come out. Now I put it in as a long form version, which is 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Right.
And it's a dense film. Yeah. There's a section on duality, archetypes. It's pretty dense. And then it's in serialized form in 27 parts. So you can watch it both ways. And if you're watching the long form, just remember where you ended. You can go back to the serialized version. So it's pretty easy to watch that way on both sides.
Well, maybe this is a good transition since we're talking about YouTube to talk about what's going on with, for all intents and purposes, censorship that's taking place on YouTube. And, this whole thing started with Alex Jones. I mean, they went after the white rhino, right? Mm-hmm. That's what happened. And now they're starting to trickle down and begin to, get into the actual machinery and the mechanism of YouTube itself. You haven't had a chance to look at it, but I sent you this document, which I'll probably put a link to in the video, and people should check this out. It's a very detailed document, and it's by the datasociety.net, okay? And there are a number of people who are doing YouTube videos on this very intense, dense document, which is basically pointing out the alternative influence network on YouTube. And they're not pointing it out to celebrate it. They're pointing it out so that they can alert people of what's going on theoretically, but their end game is to get YouTube to change the algorithms so that this content or content that's related to people like Joe Rogan, who's kind of an outlier in this mix. I'm right now. Why don't I do this? I'm going to do a little share screen here so people can see what I'm talking about. And
I was really surprised that Joe Rogan popped up there. Joe Rogan is about as mainstream as you can get.
You'll see the. Let me just find this here.
Well, maybe not as mainstream.
You'll see the associations here. So this is the document I'm talking about, the Alternative Influence Network on YouTube.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, what's interesting is kind of at this. It's not really centric. There's like no center, but there are people on here like this Tim Pool guy. He's into LGBTQ. He voted for Bernie Sanders. I mean, what is he doing on this list? I don't understand this. But here's Peterson, kind of on the outer ring, fringe, and here's Rogan, kind of way out there.
Owen Benjamin, who's gone a bit off the rails lately.
Yeah.
So
it looks like what they're trying to portray are nodes, right? Like Stephen Molyneux is a node. Steven Crowder is a node. And off of these nodes are people that influence, and they in turn influence these other people, right? So on the edge, there's Sticks and Hammers 666. And he's right next to Richard Spencer. Now, if you sat down and talked to Sticks about Spencer, he would completely disavow Richard Spencer. Like there's no way that he would be even remotely related to Richard Spencer in terms of ideology, because he knows Richard Spencer is a shill. That's what he is. Richard Spencer is a disinfo agent. That's what he's done. It's who he is all his life. But there he is. He's right next to him. So it's not really a fair representation. But there's nothing fair about this at all. What they want to do is they want to create a network that shows that these things are going on, and these are the nodes of influences, and how it has to be disassembled node by node. Like you have to take certain people out. Like if you take Molyneux out, these nodes of influences aren't as powerful. If you take Steven Crowder out, the nodes of influences aren't as powerful. If you take Colin Robertson, millennial, well, you get the picture.
Yeah, but where did they put Alex Jones?
He's irrelevant. He's not on YouTube.
No, but this has April 1st, 2018. He was still on then. Strange.
Maybe they saw the writing on the wall. Maybe they knew it was coming.
You know, I was going to mention, I don't know if you remember that night, we were on Skype, I think it was on Skype, and I sent you a message, and I said, remember we were talking about Alex Jones and he's done? I think it was probably in May. He started implicating Mueller in 9/11, and I remember I sent you, I said, he's absolutely done today.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was April, May that I think it was pretty clear that they were going to get rid of him. But this can be said real simply. I mean, this is a play on the elections. You take Alex Jones out. Do you think, this is a good question. Would Trump have won without Alex Jones? I don't know. If there had not been an Alex Jones, I don't know.
I'm not sure. I would say likely not.
It would have been closer. It would have been a lot closer. I think that much we can all agree on.
I would agree with that. It's interesting that Henrik Palmgren is like way out there. I wonder how Henrik feels about that. I wonder if he feels lonely out there.
I think he's probably a little depressed, no? Molyneux is loving this. He's going to go off. Oh, my God. He's going to get 7 hours of content out of this.
You know what I thought was really interesting here is James Damore, who is the engineer from Google. He's in here. Did you see that?
Oh, my God. They put him in here.
Yeah, James Damore's in there.
That poor guy.
But I would eliminate these guys like Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin. I mean, they're all fake.
Oh, come on. Ben Shapiro. Do you remember that New York Times article that talked about the dark web?
Yeah, of course.
That was totally construed. And that's all. Dave Rubin spent 1 month talking about, we're the dark web. It was like, let's join the Boy Scouts. It was just nauseating to hear him talk like that.
Yeah, no. It's so, if you went through, like, if you know who these people are, and who their alliances are, and you went through them one by one, you'd have to scratch your head and say, really? I mean, there's no, Richard Spencer is like mildly, I don't know, mildly controversial, but I don't think he's that controversial anymore. And he's clearly he's a disinfo agent and has been for a long time. So anyway, this is going on now, and they're actually beginning this movement towards taking YouTube channels down. People are disappearing. This guy, Bill Smith, you mentioned him, right? He's gone. Nobody can, did you know Bill Smith? You know who he is? Bill Smith?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
So Bill Smith was one of these guys that came out as a big pro QAnon guy. And so he built up a lot of hits on his YouTube channel very, very quickly. And all of a sudden, he's just gone. He's out. He's, pulled the plug. Dutch Sense? You know Dutch Sense? The earthquake guy?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he just put, no, he's not there. But he just posted yesterday that he's getting out of the forecasting business. And,
yesterday? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, he's got a history of kind of being harassed. And I think around 2010, 2011, I think it might have been late 2010, when he was really starting to gain a lot of traction, spending time over on Project Avalon, Kerry Cassidy. One of his best friends got murdered. So he went through a phase where I think he left or got off for a while, and then he came back. Well, now he's like put in his au revoir. He says, I'm done. And he basically said, they got to me. That's what he said. They got to me. And I'm not going to fight it anymore. So he's gone. So there's a major insurgency now to completely clean up YouTube. Anything related to Sandy Hook, gone, right? They've been purging material from the 2016 election of all the meltdowns. That's going away. So we're living in this kind of like Stalinist era now, where all this information and all this media is just, being either shut down or completely wiped out. You shared with me earlier about Isaac Weishaupt, whom I've had on my show, and how he was just eliminated, and all his videos are gone. And he's not the only one. I mean, all of Alex Jones's videos are gone. They're gone. Maybe they backed him up somewhere in InfoWars. Maybe they did that, but they're gone.
Greg Carlson of Higher Side Chats, they gave him two strikes.
Greg Carlson, Greg Carlwood,
or Greg Carlwood, I'm sorry, but he talks about just general esoteric stuff. He goes a little bit, but there is nothing at all that they should. I mean, I can't believe they did that. So it's anybody who's putting. Now, right. I think we can't forget big data in this, because if some of these names may seem a little bizarre, but from a big data standpoint, you can go in and calculate how many people you take off and what percentages that's going to help you in specific districts. Because remember, they don't care about the national vote. It's a congressional election. So they're looking in certain districts, what can we, because remember, Google has all of this information, all of it. Yeah. So by picking and choosing, you can add 3, 4, 10, 20,000 votes in an election. And I mean, I think this is, I don't know. I really don't know with all that's going on. I know you're slightly optimistic, on the Republicans here, but looking at this chart, and I used to work in online marketing, for agencies and an inside and with media, and with the data they have now, what they're able to do. Yeah. Remember, they can look back at 2016, look at the result,
they can do.
And project forward. So they have the data now from 2016.
That's right.
This is all extremely calculated.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So it's all about funneling. It's all about targeting. It's all about filtering. And we're going to see a lot more of it before we get to the which I think is probably going to be one of the most important elections in history. I think say that. They say that, this is the most important one.
No, but this one is.
This one is very important because so much is on the table, and there's been so much destabilization prior to this upcoming election.
And I just want to mention one other thing, that with demographic data now that's so precise, you can look at someone's IP address, and I'm guessing this now. I don't know this, but I'm guessing with between 70-80% chance you can know, did they vote and who they voted for. So with this kind of targeting now is incredibly precise.
Absolutely.
So we can't forget this, that I mean, I'm sure everyone's familiar with the whole Cambridge Analytica thing and what they did. But remember, this is Cambridge Analytica with all the 2016 data.
Right.
It makes it that much more powerful.
They've got a bigger tranche. Now,
oh my God.
let's be fair, because when the 2016 election was up and running and it was flying down the speedway, Google, which was led by Eric Schmidt at that time, Alpha Group, with Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt was basically hired by Hillary Clinton,
right,
the DNC, to run their analytics campaign. And everything they were getting back from Eric Schmidt and Alpha was pointing towards a victory. And they were basically playing out a script that they were following based on the data and the analytics. And guess what happened? It didn't work. It didn't work because Eric Schmidt and Google, they didn't understand that there were large swaths of people that were unaccounted for. They did not factor in the right variables. Yeah, that's why they lost the election. Because
remember, now they have that data.
Now they have the variables. They understand that. So what they're doing now is they're trying to eliminate the variables. And it's been a broad spectrum campaign to do that. And it's everything from completely denigrating Trump and his followers on a daily basis, demoralization, and now there's the cloud that comes over free speech and the actual elimination. I mean, to me, this is kind of like a version of Argentina, during the 70s. That disappears. And one day there's a website there and it's not there anymore. One day there's a YouTube channel there and it's not there anymore. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just happening in the virtual state.
I mean, I worked in the internet from about 97, 98. Do you remember that spirit of when Napster came out, when the beginnings of Napster? It was like the Wild West. And now it's turned into Sears,
Oh, it's turned into worse than Sears.
Well, you know what I mean?
I do. Well, I was at Mondo 2000 in 96. And Mondo was like the Bible of like the Silicon Valley interface between psychedelics and cybernetics. And the possibility that was floating around in the air was incredible.
It was fabulous.
Like the Bay Area, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, 95 to 2001 was the place to be. It was because there's stupid money being floated around by VCs and, dumb ideas. Some are actually good ideas. I was there. I worked for eMusic. I did it for 5 years. Went in on January of 2000. And I'll never forget, 2 months later, I went to a panel on digital music, and some journalist was talking about Napster. I'm like, this shit's over.
I had lunch in 2000 with do you remember a site mp3.com?
Yeah. So my company wasn't my company, but the company I worked for eventually merged with mp3.com.
So I was having lunch with this guy in 2000, and he said it's done. And he came from the music industry too, and I was like, I was a kid when I was a kid, all my money I spent on LPs. No, and I was like, "Are you sure?" He said, "It's done." And for the first time revenue in music grew was with Spotify in 2014. It finally had an up year. That was almost 13 years down.
Right, and even the data from Spotify is really misleading. Because the amount of plays that has to take place in order for an artist to gain any, slightly significant amount of money, you cannot like compare a Spotify data point with a data point from the record industry circa 1980. It's just it's like
yeah, but I just mean total revenue in the music industry finally got an uplift after 13. Negative years. That's incredible. But that kind of stuff happened every day. all sorts of stuff.
Well, it was incredible time.
It was a great time. And, you know,
really
kids
great.
now, I think, don't remember that time, but anything was possible. I would have meetings and just your mind was blown. You're doing
no, I was like, well, you know what's really interesting is if you go back and watch that movie, The Smartest Guys in the Room with Enron, about Enron.
Ah, right. Yeah, that's a great documentary.
So you know, you look at what they're doing, it's like, well, we're not just going to be an investment company. We're going to be a lot of things. And so Enron actually got into video streaming. Like they were going to stream movies. And that was part of their stock portfolio. And they had built this whole thing out. This is what they were going to do. And I mean, basically, Enron was selling hype. That's all they were doing, was selling hype until they figured out how to screw people out of their energy. But in some ways, it was like Silicon Valley. They're sitting there going, well, what can we do with this? And they actually entered into some partnerships. Like I think they entered into a limited partnership with whatchamacallit, the video store.
Yeah, the one that from Heisinga's.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
It's so popular we can't remember it anymore. But
God, do you remember that? That seems like a different.
Dude, it's a different planet.
Oh my God,
it's a different planet.
What was the name of that place? I can't.
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster. I see it in my mind.
Blockbuster. So they entered into a limited deal with Blockbuster, and I don't know how Blockbuster was going to get the rights to stream the movies, but they entered into a deal to make it look legit, right? Like whatever. But that's what they were doing. The internet was amazing back then, and it was like there was this everything changed, man. On 9/11/2001, everything changed. That was the day. Napster, yeah, that was the atom bomb. But 9/11/2001 changed everything. There was a darkness that descended upon this country.
Yeah,
a pall that has not lifted.
Western Europe, yeah,
it is not lifted whatsoever. I'll give you one brief insight into my time in the music business there, the digital stuff, and we'll get into these charts. So when we got bought by Vivendi / Universal, and the guy there was a Seagram's company. So I was technically an employee of Seagram's for a while. And so they bought mp3.com and they bought the company I was with, and they merged us. So right after that happened, this guy, Larry Kinswell, came up, and he was the head of sort of this conglomeration, because there was also Universal Music involved. There was a lot of moving pieces. And he came in and he talked to us. He said, we don't have any problem with digital music. We really don't. We just want to make sure that you always have to renew your relationship with it. Meaning that his vision has become the de facto model today. Like you can get 4,000 songs on iTunes Radio, right? Or Apple Music, but you got to keep paying that fee. Same thing with Spotify if you want the really good version of it. So this is what's happened now. This whole idea of ubiquity, and you can get it on any device anywhere, right? But you don't own any of it. And that's what he was talking about way back in 2001. It's become the industry standard.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're seeing the end of that because YouTube was kind of like the last great place where anything could happen.
Absolutely.
I want to say, I just want to say two things. One, I really loved YouTube for a couple of years there because it was so free. No?
Yeah.
I mean, you could find anything there.
You found
one of the reasons I made this film was that energy and you, because I remember I was talking to you once and I have that square with it's a trine, Neptune to my Mercury. And I never forget, this was like 3 or 4 years ago, you go, Robert, you should make a film. And it stuck with me. And then I was thinking, that between what you said and that YouTube energy, that's why I made this, one of the reasons I made this film.
Well, that's great, man.
Today, so thank you very much. But the thing is, it's so sad. This is like that. I'll never forget the day when Napster was banned. Some judge, I can't remember what happened. And I remember going in the office and there was just this damper, it's like something had died in the music, that whole free music thing. And now you see the same thing with YouTube. It's sad. It's really
Yeah,
sad.
no, I think it's a pretty good analogy, with the exception that Napster was tied to content that was out there being circulated, and people were actually trying to make money off of it. Like, I think music needed to have a little more liberation. Like, I think that the majors probably should have gotten involved in digital music earlier and tried to figure out how they could work with labels and artists. If they had done that earlier and Napster came along, they might have cordoned off their territory so that Napster wouldn't have been able to torpedo what they were doing. Because I think the difference between making a cassette for a couple of your friends, versus making a playlist for 10,000 of your best friends is a very different proposition. And
Right.
and if I was an artist, I would take some objection to that. If I was a touring artist and that's all I really did, like if I was a Fish or one of those bands, I probably wouldn't give a shit because they make a lot of their money off merch and stuff like that.
But let's look at the big picture too. I remember living overseas in the 1980s. A long distance call would cost $20 for 5 minutes.
Here we
Now
are
it's
now.
free.
I know. I
Think
mean,
about think about the newspaper business. Do you remember buying the paper? Buying the paper, your coffee, your cigarettes, that's gone. So I mean, so many industries have been destroyed.
oh, absolutely.
And,
And
and
yeah,
let's face it, music fell into that bucket.
music fell into that chasm. And if you were an artist right around 2002, 2003, if you didn't see the writing on the wall about how to recreate yourself, you're probably doing something else these days.
Think about journalism.
I mean,
I got an article mentioned in Market Watch, and you know how much money I got for it? Nothing.
yeah. Well,
And what I mean is that my content was good enough to be in Market Watch, and guys working for Market Watch will pay. I think it was like $300-400 for an article.
right.
When 40 years ago, these guys were making good money and they were living the life of a journalist, and they could write long form.
That's right.
Good luck with that, getting paid for long form now.
Yeah. No, that's not happening.
Yeah. So
I remember. I remember one of my the first times I got published in a daily newspaper, and it was the San Francisco Examiner, and I had 2 pieces published there in the Examiner. To me, it was a big deal. It was a daily. It was an afternoon daily. Well, it doesn't exist in that form anymore, and I kind of got in at the end of sort of being an independent journalist and doing stuff like that. Yeah, we're looking at the end of an era. I mean, it is coming to an end. And, one of the things that we talk about this over my Facebook page, one of the things that I think people really need to do is buy books and have a library, because that day is coming.
it is.
Fahrenheit 451 is coming. They're telling us they did the remake. It is coming, and they're going to start to remove books. They're going to start to remove movies. This is just the first wave, right? Just think, right? At some point, somebody's going to look at Dirty Harry, and they're going to call that film a misogynistic and racist movie, and you won't be able to see Dirty Harry anymore. That's true. It's true.
And it's affecting artists, because I'll be completely honest. I was very careful making this film.
Yeah.
Stay away from anything. I want this film to stay on YouTube for a long time for people to be able to see it. But it's kind of a shame that I had to have that boogeyman kind of looking over my shoulder. Like, are you sure you want to say this? Are you sure? And it might have taken.
Well, that's it, right? In your head now.
Sad. That's sad, because where else or am I going to get tens of thousands of people to watch my film?
Right.
That's the only place I can do it.
Right. So they're in your head. The censor is in your head.
Yeah.
And it's been in our head for a long time. I mean, it was inserted at the inception of political correctness.
Yeah.
And now it's been given a sheriff's badge and free to do whatever it wants. So why don't you and I shift a little bit? This is a great conversation. And why don't you and I shift a little bit? Let's talk about these charts.
Yeah, let me pull up. Okay, I've got the 8 a.m. chart up now.
Okay, so I'm going to pull it up here, the 8 a.m. chart. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the chart for election. Let's make sure I get the right one here. We got a couple charts here, and I'm going to look at this one right here. I believe this is the right one. Let's pull it up. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, perfect. Yeah, if you can leave it like that, perfect. This is the 8 a.m., right?
Yeah, this
one
is
we
the
were
8
looking at.
a.m. chart. So
Great.
this is, now, Robert had a really good point in that this is kind of a regional election where congressmen and even senators are up for election here. And it's regional, and we're dealing with national implications, regional with national implications. Because if the House changes drastically, and by the way, the predictions right now are that what's going to happen with Trump will mirror what happened with Obama in his second term. That's kind of the prediction that's happening, and that the Senate will probably remain Republican. So this is, maybe sort of the check and balance thing that, we're always talking about and cheerleading for. But can there be something else going on that night? Will there be some kind of influence that would be seen or perhaps unseen? We're going to look at these charts and find out. So the first thing that jumps out here is this is at 8 o'clock in the morning when the polls open. I think we're going to have a big turnout. Look at where Jupiter is on that ascendant, right? That means a lot, correct?
Absolutely.
So we're going to have a lot. And there's a feeling like at 28 and 29 degrees in Scorpio, what's that feeling like at that final degree of Scorpio? How are people feeling with that? It's amplified, right? What does that feel like to you, Robert?
Yeah, I mean, it's in that the depth of Scorpio. I mean, Scorpio is always that really deep down, but remember, hidden. I mean, the one trait that you always get from that Scorpio is you never know really what they're thinking. And if we think of that as the electorate, if we think of the ascendant as the electorate, these are the people going to vote. I think what this indicates is I like the idea of the turnout, but also there's a lot of mystery about this election. There's a lot of unknowns. There's not a lot clear here. And
yeah, well, we're going to get to that in the 12th house. My take on that Jupiter at that 29th degree, I get fear and loathing. That's the energy I pick up. It's dark, it's big, it's unstable at that 29th degree. I think what you're going to see is the kind of the sort of the last leg of people who've been furiously working phones. You're going to see that. You're going to see a lot of people engaged in, Alinsky style community organizing and activities. And I think there's going to be a huge amount of burnout here because you got a Mars square to Jupiter, right? Mars square to Jupiter, that's going on. I get at that 29th degree, kind of this intensity and darkness. And I get a sense of foreboding and I'm not afraid of Scorpio. I mean, that's the degree of my rising sign, but I'm looking at this amplification process, and it's squaring Mars in Aquarius, which is radical, right? I mean, Mars in Aquarius is radical. It's revolutionary. It's in the third house, Gemini's house, by any means necessary. This is a very intense, powerful, explosive, dark, heavy. I don't get hopeful at all. Maybe if Jupiter's in Sag, that's a different story, but it's not.
I was going to say, what a difference a day makes here, because
That's right.
Jupiter the next day will probably be in Sagittarius.
That's right. And so now we're like, wow, but now
that would have been oof.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have Mercury there, and look what Mercury's doing. Mercury's doing that little do-si-do with Neptune.
And Mercury in Sagittarius, it's not a strong Mercury at all. It's in fall.
Right.
And it's not a good placement for Mercury here.
There's a lot of bloviating with Mercury and Sagittarius. I've always, here's the funny part about Mercury and Sagittarius. People that have Mercury and Sagittarius in their charts will say some shit, right? You'll go, what? Like, what? Where are you getting that from? And then what's really weird about that is that they may actually be right, but they haven't like gone through that process of figuring it out.
It comes out too quickly.
It just comes right out of their ass. But in a lot of instances, it can be right. Like, what? How did you get there? And then you think about it and you go, this is interesting. So there's a lot of over targeting and overshooting with Mercury and Sag. So how does this affect the poles? Is this going to affect the poles? Can we trust the poles with Mercury Sag squared Neptune? I think,
and you're right. That square, that square with Neptune is crucial here because it puts all that vagueness and confusion and
right. And look where Neptune is. Right. Remember, we cast this for Washington D.C.
Right, Washington D.C. 8 a.m.
And look where it's right at the IC. This is if Washington D.C.
is the mama of us all,
is the heart of America.
Right.
Neptune is in the womb right here of the mother of America, right? It's right there. Confusion, obfuscation, rumors, a lot of rumoring, perhaps.
Yeah, that's looking at that placement now, that is not good. That is not good.
No, that's a bunch of lying. This is what it is.
Because let's face it, if the Republicans win, what's going to be the response of the Democrats? Are they going to finally accept that they need to adjust the message, change the strategy? No. I don't think so. I think
they're going to go spinal tap. They're going to go spinal tap and turn it to 11. That's what they'll do.
Yeah. It's going to be all out war. I
agree. Look, okay, so let's stay with that Neptune and follow that line right up to the sun in the 12th house.
Not a great sun placement at all. Hidden enemies, the 12th house. I mean, we were talking about this before. You think the 8th is maybe worse, but I know a lot, because the 8th house, the sun in the 8th house, you do get a lot of intuition. You get it opens up a lot of things on the sexual side. But the 12th house, you've always got those hidden enemies. People are, and you're always in the shadows. It's the house of prisons. No? Yeah. It's a dark place, and that's dark.
It is dark.
That is.
I think to your point, one of the things I do like about the 8th house is that it's kind of, through transits, with transits, it's like the shaman's journey through the younger world, and you come out the other side.
Right.
I think that's the reckoning of the 8th. But you're right. The 12th house is deep. It's behind the scenes. You got Scorpio there at the last degree of the Via Combusta at 14 degrees.
Right, the last degree.
Yeah. So if people aren't familiar with the term Via Combusta, I'm going to read it for you. And this is from the glossary of terms from skyscript.co.uk. So the Via Combusta is the area between 15 Libra and 15 Scorpio. And it's termed the Via Combusta, or the fiery road, or the combust way. It is considered to be a debilitating area, particularly detrimental to the moon. So we don't have the moon in the picture there at the 15th degree. Al-Biruni wrote of it, the combust way is the last part of Libra and the first part of Scorpio. These two signs are not congenial to the sun and the moon on account of the obscurity and ill luck connected with them, and because each of them is the fall of one of the luminaries. They also contain the two malefics, the one by exaltation, Libra Saturn, the other by house, Scorpio Mars. This may be a very ancient aphorism originating from the period when 15 Libra corresponded with the autumn equinox. So the idea here is that these degrees between 15 Libra and 15 Scorpio are hot, they're hellish degrees, they're burning degrees. It's kind of fatalistic, and this is in no way a determination of who you are and how your chart is operating. But at the same time, certainly it's something to look at and take into account. And here we've got the sun at the 14th degree, the last degree of the Via Combusta, or the burning way. And you and I looked at this trine with Neptune. There's something going on behind the scenes here.
Yeah. And remember, a lot of U.S. elections, the sun will be out of the Via Combusta, because a lot of the elections will be the 8th, the 9th, But here you're there. So, and the fact that it's the 12th house, it's not a great chart. It's not a real positive chart.
I'll tell you what's interesting is the midheaven in Virgo. And, Virgo is all about details, and it's all about, crossing T's and dotting I's. And maybe the Virgo in midheaven might have some kind of regulatory function over electoral procedures. I mean, that's possible. But I would say by and large, this is a very challenging chart. Yeah, there's a sense of desperation in the second house. Saturn and Pluto are there. Pluto's fear. Pluto in the second house is fear. You have to get through that Pluto to get through this fear of death, or there is some intense energy at 8 o'clock in the morning here, man.
But if you were casting this for the Republican Party, I don't know, having both Pluto and Saturn in the second house,
yeah,
you would think that. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Okay. If you're the Republican Party with Saturn and Pluto in the second house,
you would think that you're going to have a loss of something. You're going to what you possess with Pluto there.
Depends on the angles, right? I think this is going to be a difficult relationship if we're ascribing that Capricornian and Saturnian energy to the Republican Party. I would say difficult relationship with women, with the squares going from Pluto to Venus, right? Difficult with women. But on the other hand, Saturn also has a different relationship going on. Saturn's in sextile with Venus. So there could also be kind of a different relationship with more traditional women or older women. And the trine from Saturn to Uranus is very interesting because we're having this confluence of the old and the new. Now, we did note that Uranus is moving backwards and headed towards Aries in this chart. And it's opposing the moon and opposing Venus. So again, Uranus represents technology. Represents technology. And it's in the 5th house, which is, that's pastimes and children. I wonder if young people are going to have much of an effect on this election, which is something we didn't really talk about. Because there was a big kind of, movement to get these 17-year-olds enrolled to vote by, David Hogg and, his posse. I wonder if the Uranian piece could be the youth here coming in and swinging this in a different direction. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a very controversial. And it starts off kind of in some ways hopeful, trepidatious. Let's see where it goes. Why don't we just skip to the end of the day?
Yeah.
Let's skip to the end of the day.
But as an electional chart, if I were the Republicans, I would change the date.
Maybe they're going to change the date by what's going on in the 12th house. Maybe that's what they're doing. They'll use some of Trump's uncle's time machine technology, right? So here's what it looks like at the end of the day. So we start off in Scorpio and we end in Cancer on the ascendant at 8 p.m. on election night, which is a very different energy. It's much more. I mean, both signs are feminine. But Cancer is much more sensitive and to some degree receptive. It doesn't have the same kind of potential to push out that Scorpio does. And there's more probably a sense of a real feeling here. So whoever loses on election night, that Cancerian ascendant will be very prominent, right? Because there's going to be a lot of feeling going on. That kind of leads a little bit towards. In some
look at the descendant. In the descendant,
Saturn is over there. Yeah,
Saturn and Pluto, both of them. Now, what's interesting is Saturn at 8 a.m. is under the horizon.
Yeah, it's just
cold. That's a really cold Saturn. This Saturn is really strong. Saturn rules Capricorn. It's still got some sun on it. It's a powerful Saturn. It's not. I wouldn't look at this as necessarily a malefic Saturn here, but that Pluto. I mean. You still got the Pluto there. Now, one question.
Here's what I think.
Robert, one question. If in an election, who's the ascendant, who's the descendant?
I look at it as more of a condition or a state versus a party. I would say perhaps if we're going to ascribe a meaning, I would say the ascendant would be the party in power.
And the decent, that's what I was thinking. Or you could look at government and people, the rulers and who they rule.
Well, I could tell you right now, with Pluto in the 7th house, there could be some relationships that are going to end over this election.
Pluto and Saturn, yeah.
If you're a lawyer, you're loving this election. You're already planning your vacation.
Yeah.
Taking your wife to Europe for a month, or your mistress, whichever one you're tied to at that point in time. Here's what do you think of Neptune on the midheaven? To me, that's dicey, man. That's like to me, Neptune on the midheaven. It's like there is no resolution here, right?
Oh
No resolution. God. It's like foggy. This doesn't bode well.
I've had Neptune on on my natal chart there, very close there, and if this election is anything like my career path, it's going to be bad news.
America, start drinking now.
Yeah, I would just
get some momentum on Neptune. I don't like Neptune on the midheaven. I think it's terrible.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
And it's
I have it. It's
somebody is going to be the victim here with Neptune on the midheaven. Somebody's going to cry victim. It's going to happen. Yeah. And what is it squaring? It's still squaring Mercury. Dude, I'm telling you right now, I know I'm not going out on too much of a limb here, but we're looking at heavy duty voter irregularity, and people are going to be crying bloody murder, maybe on both sides, maybe on one side. But look where Mercury is right here. It's in the 6th house, which is supposed to be Virgo's house, details, right? All that stuff. Yeah, Mercury and Sag there. Square it up against Neptune. There's no details there. That's like sloppy, man. Sloppy jalopy.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Mercury and Sag is it's not its home. No, it's dealing with concepts and ideas. It's like a bartender who gets in too deep,
Yeah.
One thing's talking about, batting and pitching, but then you started getting the quantum. It's like, think of a bartender talking quantum physics. That's Mercury and Sagittarius.
I had this conversation 2 days ago at this place that I go and have my pineapple cider. And I'm sitting there talking to this guy, and he's a cool guy. He was in an '80s kind of metal progressive band, long hair. He showed me a video. It was like, that's pretty cool, man. And I said, I bet you had no problem, with the ladies. He says, you have no idea. He went through all that. But then we start talking about Trump, and we get into we go down the Obama rabbit hole, and man, we're shoveling together, right? Yeah. We go down all these different, it's like we're cool, and all of a sudden, I pop in. Yeah, the only thing I do differently is I'd have a different ally in the Middle East besides Israel. He's like, what? So this is like your conversation, and we're like, piling on Obama together, and then all of a sudden I throw this hand grenade in the room, and he's like, why would you do that? Well, who would your allies be? So it's real simple. It'd be Syria and Iran. He's like, we say, well, why? So because there's more Christians in Syria than any other country in the Middle East, except maybe Lebanon, but I bet you it's still more in Syria. And who's got the most resources? Who's got the most oil, the most gas, right?
Exactly. Do what's good for us.
Right. I'm making friends with the Syrians, and I'm making friends with the Iranians.
Absolutely.
He could not follow that logic. Could not follow it. And then, I got into like foreign policy and I got into the consulate, the embassy. And then I blurted out that Jared Kushner was the Antichrist. And this guy got so serious. He said, "You just crossed the line." No, seriously, you just crossed. I mean, I swear to God, I thought he was going to hit me.
From a heavy metal band?
He was like, "You just crossed the line." And I'm like, whoa, man. Okay, I don't have an hour to like break this shit down. But let's just agree to disagree on this so we can go back and be bar friends.
And be friends,
Yeah. What do you think of Uranus in the 11th house, man? That's radical. That is radical. It's in its own house. But it's got opposition to the moon, but the moon has moved. The moon has moved, but on the 8 a.m. chart, we didn't really talk about that, but that opposition is perfect. It's nuts on, as I used to say in my surveying days, we used to call it. That's absolutely on that 8 a.m. chart.
That's a scary opposition.
And some people may say, "Oh, here's how I see it. I'll probably get a YouTube strike for this." I think it's just women going crazy with that Moon Uranus opposition, right?
Oh no, I'm staying away from that one.
Yeah,
I don't want to put any strikes on my film.
Well, it's women. Come on now, Uranus is opposing the Moon. It's like it's a crazy moon. And by the way, that is a disseminating moon. That's a balsamic moon. It is not a new moon. That is death. That is letting go. Somebody's going to get fucking butthurt on this election.
But by the way, the new moon should be what by it's a couple hours from there. Wouldn't it be about 8 hours? You'll have
It'd be 8 hours. It would be sometime the next day.
Interesting.
But I would say that by 8 p.m. Eastern, that'll put whether make it 5 p.m. on the West Coast. Even if you get to like 9, 10 p.m., 10 p.m., you're at like, 7 o'clock, the polls are done, the votes are in, and that's when all the cheating begins, right? So we'll see what happens, but I feel like somebody's going to be butthurt, and then the next day, that true node goes into Cancer, and then the South node goes into Capricorn, and that's when I believe we begin to see the fall of these Capricornian structures and forces that culminate in 2020. So.
Right, and that node there is very interesting place for that node.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I got to wrap this up and get on the road. But this has been great, Robert, connecting with you. We got to do this more often.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. We should definitely do it again, man. I had a great time. And thanks again for your inspiration to getting the film done. How many years ago was it?
A long time ago. But, hey, whatever I could do, to move the chains, man. That's what I'm here for. So, excellent. Well, listen, you take good care. And have a great night, man. Go find Robert over on YouTube with his 21 Faces of God. And this is Robert Phoenix signing out.